Hi there, you're watching Amped, a roundup of what's been happening this week in music. Coming up, Houston, do we have a problem? Alexandra Burke tells us what she's really like.
I'm a bit of a nutcase at times.
Lissie shares her best piece of advice.
But you don't where you eat. Do you know what that means? Yeah.
And live music in our studio with Fife Dangerfield. But first, we start with the news that Malcolm McLaren, the godfather of punk, has died. He was 64 and had been suffering from cancer for some time. Malcolm McLaren will best be remembered as the pop Svengali who unleashed the Sex Pistols on the world. Music journalist John Savage said without him, there wouldn't have been any British punk. He first made his name with a clothes shop on the King's Road in Chelsea that he opened with his then girlfriend Vivienne Westwood in the early 70s. He then moved into music, putting together the Sex Pistols. The band gained notoriety with singles such as Anarchy in the UK and God Save the Queen in Jubilee Year. His career even included a brush with politics after he threw his hat in the ring to become Mayor of London. Malcolm McLaren had been suffering from a rare form of cancer for some time, but had kept it secret. He passed away at a hospital in Switzerland after his condition had suddenly worsened. His spokesman, Les Molley, said family members were in shock and devastated. McLaren's body is expected to be brought back to London to his final resting place, Highgate Cemetery, just as he wanted. Well, the tributes have been pouring in, led by the fashion designer Dame Vivienne Westwood. In a statement, she described Malcolm McLaren as being a very charismatic, special and talented person. She said, "When we were young and I fell in love with Malcolm, I thought he was beautiful, and I still do." Meanwhile, Glenn Matlock is the bassist from the Sex Pistols' original lineup. This is what he had to say.
I was quite saddened to hear the news. I mean, a lot of water gone under the bridge for me, and I hadn't seen Malcolm for a long time. When I was in New York last November, strolling down Fifth Avenue, and I just bumped into him on the street, and he looked as right as lantern. He didn't look ill or anything at all. We had a very brief conversation, but to find out this morning that he died of cancer was a bit of a blow. You know, he was a very stylish, enthusiastic, wouldn't take any nonsense. It was a laugh. And he was a one-off kind of person. You know, it was really a pleasure to have met Malcolm over the years, but he only had another side that he kind of used people and he used them up and spat them out.
And in downtown LA, rock musicians at the annual Revolver Awards remembered McLaren and his influence on the British as well as the international music scene.
A legacy that will never fade. Malcolm McLaren created an attitude. Not just a style or an aesthetic, an attitude that will continue, I imagine, forever.
And a legend never dies.
I thought he was brilliant. I mean, like, you know, what they created and everything, gotta love it. Sex Pistols kick ass. I mean, you know, and putting that whole thing together, I thought it was great.
Well, I mean, it's hard to even gauge the impact of the Sex Pistols, much like the impact of the Ramones. I mean, the Sex Pistols pretty much, the Ramones invented the sound of punk rock, but the Sex Pistols sort of invented the whole bad attitude of it and the look. So, I mean, you can't even gauge the look. It's like, what's the influence of Elvis on rock and roll? I mean, that's the Malcolm McLaren and the Sex Pistols are for punk rock, you know, really.
Well, there's no doubt that in so many ways Malcolm McLaren had a huge impact on music, fashion and culture, but he was always a controversial figure. Sex Pistols frontman John Lydon, or Johnny Rotten, famously described him as the most evil person on earth after they fell out over royalties. Well, we spoke to James McMahon, features editor at The NME, about what McLaren's legacy would be.
I think Malcolm McLaren saw himself as a Svengali figure, and I think that led to a lot of conflict as the band, during the band's lifespan, whether that was between John Lydon and Malcolm McLaren. I think it's really interesting to think about the fact that it was actually Steve Jones, who's the guitarist in Sex Pistols, who chose Malcolm McLaren to manage them in the first place. So in that sense, Malcolm McLaren wasn't the first to arrive, but I think it was a 50-50 split. I don't think, John Lydon once said very famously, no one made me, you know, he is himself, no one made him. And the Sex Pistols wouldn't be the Sex Pistols without the characters that were in that band, but at the same time, it was Malcolm McLaren that kind of let the world know that there was something very, very special and something very, very exciting on his hands.
James McMahon from The Enemy on Malcolm McLaren, who has died aged 64. Still to come.
I don't want to say a bad expression on TV, but you don't where you eat.
Lissie explains her life philosophy. Alexandra Burke reveals her true self, and live music from Fife Dangerfield. But first, Whitney Houston is insisting she's feeling great and is determined to get on with her UK tour, despite having to cancel the first 2 shows planned for this week due to illness. The 47-year-old diva pulled out of 2 gigs in Manchester with reports she was suffering from a respiratory infection. Doctors have told her to rest, and her people say she'll be back on course for the next show in Birmingham on April the 13th. Well, this is only the UK leg of Whitney's comeback tour, and it hasn't gone without a few hiccups. Here she is at a concert in Australia, perhaps not the performance of her life, and it seems some of the punters at the gig agreed, with several walking out.
She shouldn't have turned up.
No. Sorry we're having to leave
Big
early.
waste of money, it was dreadful.
It's the worst concert I've ever been to in my life.
Disgraceful.
Disappointed.
Horrible.
Upset.
Definitely not worth $165.
Pretty miffed, and with tickets costing that much, who could blame them? Anyway, despite all this, Whitney Houston remains one of the biggest selling female vocalists of all time and launched a comeback last year after battling with drug addiction. I Look to You, her first studio album in 7 years, came out in 2009 and topped the charts over in the US. Whitney's cancelled UK dates will now take place in June. Let's just hope when she does perform, it's the $1 million bill fans are expecting. Now, from one old school diva to one in the making, Alexandra Burke's gone from X Factor winner to #1 selling artist to Brit nominee, all in the space of just over a year. So, when we hooked up with her at a fashion event, darling, we had to find out how she manages to keep her feet on the ground.
Being calm right now because I'm being interviewed, but I don't know, I guess drink plenty of water and try and sleep well, but I'm always hyper though, so I'm a bit of a nutcase at times, but at the moment I'm being calm because I'm being interviewed and I don't want to look crazy on TV, so, but yeah, I guess you just go with the flow. I'm a happy person, so I stay happy all the time, try my best to.
Split personality, basically. Next, to a lady who got everyone's attention at this year's South by Southwest, it's Lissie Morris, who came in for a chat to coincide with the release of her single In Sleep. With her acoustic guitar, bare feet and long flowing hair, she's something of a throwback to the late 60s. American singer-songwriter Lissie Morris has been compared to Fleetwood Mac and the Grateful Dead, yet she's recorded a cover of Lady Gaga's Bad Romance. And she told us she's a big fan.
Some people who know me more from my indie Americana stuff were surprised that I would choose to cover that song, but I'm a huge fan of hers.
And speaking of fans, Lissie is accumulating a few of her own. Even the hard-to-impress gossip king Perez Hilton has been bowled over.
Apparently really thought I had a great voice. I didn't hear much else of what he thought. You know, I thanked him and then he responded, you know, yes indeed, you have a great voice. So that was pretty cool.
So with the growing following, Lissie's tip to make it big this 2010, but how does this free spirit classify her music?
I'd say, you know, it's folk rock, you know, it maybe was dabbled a bit in the indie world, but I think it's a little bit more broader than that.
And for those of you who want to sample her sound before the album comes out in June, you can get your hands on the newly released EP.
It's just one song, In Sleep, along with like a collection of videos that I shot live. So the videos are actually, the audio is a live performance done as the video is being made.
Lissie will be touring the UK this month with none other than the handsome Josh Radin, and we couldn't resist asking whether she was tempted to go there.
The fact that he's cute, I've learned at this point, you don't, I don't want to say a bad expression on TV, but you don't where you eat. Do you know what that means? Yeah.
minutes, you'll learn that that advice is golden. Live music now, and here's Guillemot's frontman, Fife Dangerfield.
Hi, I'm Fife Dangerfield, and this is a song called Faster Than the Setting Sun. Thank you. When the storm clouds higher than heaven, and there's angels defeating themselves, and you can't get past 11:30 without feeding the sharks on the shelf. Faster than the setting sun, we'll run away. Faster than the setting sun, faster than the setting sun, we'll run away. Sleep for all of these visions of the iridescent lights. You can't reach a single decision without your wet face kissing your hands. Try to understand love lines faster than the setting sun. Run away faster than the setting sun. Faster than the setting sun, run away. Faster than the setting sun. Oh, and they don't slow dance round here no more. No, they don't slow dance round here no more. No, they don't slow dance round here no more. No, they don't slow dance round here no more. Faster than the setting sun, we'll run away. Faster than the setting sun. No, they don't slow dance round here no more. No, they don't slow dance round here no more. No more. No more. No more.
And finally, Pete Doherty. He gives with one hand and takes with the other.
It's odd, really. Like the way we've always communicated with each other successfully is through music.
Yes, that was Pete last week at the official press conference held to announce the return of the Libertines. Good for some, but it sent fear and panic into the hearts of fans of Pete's other band, Baby Shambles. Would it spell the end for them? Surely there's not enough Pete to go around. Adding fuel to the fire, the band have already cancelled 2 gigs since last week. However, Baby Shambles management have told NME the band are definitely still together. Huge, massive collective sigh of relief. OK, the main news today. Malcolm McLaren, the man famed for putting together iconic punk band the Sex Pistols, has died after a long battle with cancer. He was 64. Right, next week I'll be finding out exactly what it is that Meatloaf won't do, plus loads of other great stuff. So don't miss it. Bye-bye for now.